right, our quorum being present, we'll call the meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everybody. First item on the agenda is the reorganization for Union 61.
That's it. Yep.
Current chair is Megan Cunningham, and the current secretary is
I think it's Christine. No?
Laura Alden.
Laura, she's not here.
So,
Yeah, she might have became that when she wasn't here.
I think this.
Okay, well,
that's exactly right.
I don't get a vote.
All right, so this will just be a vote of Union 61. At this time, are there nominations for the position of Union 61 chair?
I nominate Megan. Second.
All right, we have a nomination and a second. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, I will close nominations. Are there any objections from the members of the Union 61 membership? By unanimous consent, Megan Cunningham is re-elected chair of Union 61. Next, I'll take nominations for the position of secretary. Do we have any nominations?
Christine?
You were nominating Christine?
Yep.
We have a nomination, Christine Randall, and there's a second. Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, we'll close nominations. Is there any objection to the ratification of the election of Mrs. Randall? Seeing none, there'll be unanimous consent. Christine Randall is elected secretary for Union 61. Congratulations to you both. Exciting. All right, we'll move to the approval of the minutes for our November 29th, 2023 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve as submitted?
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Noyes Miller, seconded by Mrs. Randall. Are there any edits?
I just have a edit on the motion on item 2 for the school calendar. My motion was for January, not October. Not that it was consequential.
Yeah, so a change on the early words professional development day.
So it was January 10th to January 17th, 2020.
Item number 2.
Five.
Yep.
Right there. All right.
No, yeah. I'm just,
Right.
well, I know, I'm just trying to confirm. We actually voted in negative and went
Yes.
back, right. So item number 2, literally number 2, which is the bottom of the first page that starts, was not as presented. Was to change professional development day from October to January.
No, it's the amendment.
No,
It's the
it's
amendment. There's a,
Amendment on the motion.
Mr. Murphy moved, seconded, to amend the previous motion as follows. Change the early release professional development date from October 10th to October 17th. It should say January
January.
10th to January 17th. Any other edits? All right. Seeing none there, the chair will call for a vote. Those in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of November 29th, 2023 as amended for Union 61, is there any objection? For Tantasqua, any objection? By unanimous consent by both bodies, the motion carries, the minutes are approved as amended. All right. That will take us to our next item. We have a special guest this evening, visiting us from the Southern Worcester County Education Collaborative, Mr. Arnold Lundwall. Sir, come on up.
Thank you very much, everyone.
And I know there's information that was put into your packages. We'll give Mr. Lundwall a couple of minutes to give an overview of that material, and then there's an ask that ultimately will require a vote of both bodies. Good evening.
Great, thank you for having me. So I am the Executive Director of Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative. It's my 5th year with the collaborative, 4th year in the role of Executive Director. For those of you who are aware or not aware of what collaborative is, we're an extension of public schools in the region. We have 15 member districts, Tantasqua-Union 61 being one of those districts. And doing some research earlier this school year and taking some workshop classes, I realized that we're in a unique situation right now. Although the collaborative's been around for 49 years, supporting students who, for one reason or another, cannot attend their local education agency, no one has set aside a reserve fund or a parachute fund, if you want to call it that. And in order for me to set this up, I need to visit each of the 15 member school districts and secure 2/3 of a vote to establish a capital reserve fund. So I've been doing that since the beginning of April. You actually happen to be my last stop. And so far we're at 100%, not to put any pressure on anyone here. But to give you some information.
Nobody could have some real fun.
I'm not here asking for any money, nor am I asking for any money in the future. The only time that this fund would be supported would be as if we're running in a surplus. And collaboratives run a bit differently than local education agencies. Unlike school districts, we don't receive a yearly allowance from our municipalities in order to run our budget. We operate more like a business. The students that come to us are funded by local education agencies through tuitions. We also provide professional development. We also provide services such as teach of the visually impaired to our districts, PT, OT, specialty services, program evaluations, and the like. And those are all based on contracts as well as, like I said, for the students who attend tuition. So anytime that we run above what we project we should have for our enrollments any one year, we may run a surplus based on our budget and our expenditures. We're also in a unique position in that for the past 15 to 20 years, the 2 campuses that we have, our elementary school in Southbridge and our middle high school and our intensive special needs program in Dudley, have been leased. Now, our relationship with our landlords are fantastic. They have been fantastic, but I also look down the road. At some point, they may wish to retire, sell their properties, do something different with it, or there might be something catastrophic that happens that needs us to relocate. We have 0 collateral because of that. We own no real property. We lease 4 minivans, and we have 1 old Econoline 350 that's about 12 years old. We call her Big Bertha. So she really isn't a lot of collateral. If I went into a bank to ask for a loan for a down payment for any sort of real property to purchase or to build something, I simply wouldn't secure the loan. Furthermore, since we aren't an LEA, I can't go to MSBA to get bonded or to get a loan. So there's no way for me to go through that route either. We do have 1 reserve fund that allows us each year to save and hold on to 25% of our yearly expenditures. That's truly a rainy day fund. Let's say our enrollments are way down for one reason or another, and we need to make our payroll. That would be used for that. This fund would be for capital purposes. Our leases with both landlords do have a right of first refusal, which is great. But again, I don't currently have 2 nickels to rub together to say we would be able to put a down payment to get a mortgage on either of those places. The other thing is, while we have a great relationship with our landlords, for example, last year, our elementary school landlord partnered with us and with the Auburn Elks to put in a playground that we didn't have for our elementary students. We want to be able to do capital projects or partner with them to create better green spaces for our students who are bound to wheelchairs, to create green spaces for our students, to perhaps put in a gymnasium, which was actually in the works about 10 years ago with our Dudley landlords. In order for us to save the money, we need to have this reserve fund so that if we want to partner with them, it won't result in higher tuition costs to our districts. So I'm looking at it from a couple of different angles. One is to improve the properties that we have, because we enjoy being where we're at, but also to have a way out should we need to look somewhere else. The other long-term goal that I have is maybe 10 years down the road, maybe we could find a way to have all of our students under one roof. We could certainly do that. Our current enrollment is just south of 130 students. We're very small. And during our extended school year times, we've really enjoyed putting all the students into one campus together, where I see really great vertical alignment throughout those 5 or 6 weeks while they're here with us during the summer. Having them all together in one ADA compliant building would also be great. Our Dudley campus is a renovated farmhouse, and our Southbridge campus is a renovated bowling alley. So we certainly get creative when there's inclement weather. We don't have any gymnasium space per se, but there are some things that I would like to see happen for the collaborative in the near future and down the road. So securing this vote with your approval will certainly get us in the right direction to hopefully make these things real. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions for Ms. Longwell? Mrs. Randall?
I don't have a question, I have a comment. What your organization does is amazing. My son was a student there, and he transitioned back to Tantasqua. I work at Burgess Elementary School, and we have our own sub-separate programs, and I know when we can't meet the needs of our students, they go to a loving facility that gives them the same opportunities that they can that we could provide, minus a gymnasium and ADA compliant things, which we should have. So I'm in full support of this.
Thank you, appreciate it.
What's the current surplus you run annually?
It varies from year to year. When we came out of COVID, we were actually in deficit by about $110,000 each year. I did a historical, we have some records. FY23, we were at just north of 450,000. FY22, 326,000. The highest we've seen is some time back when there was some initial deposits made to our OPEB account that we established, much like I'm sure you do the same here. And that was just north of 700,000. But it's, you know, in that 200 to 500,000 range, depending. Years like this year, where we are above our census that we projected for, as well as the fact that the labor market really has been lousy, we've realized a lot of savings in that. Unfortunately, we've lost some high salaried staff that we haven't been able to replace, that were in the budget. So this year will be another year where we're going to see a fair amount of surplus. We're going to contribute to OPEB. We're also contributing back to our districts in the form of tuition credits when we can, and then hopefully establish this account.
So ultimately, if this account's established and you're only permitted to maintain without it 25% of your surplus, just so people understand, where today does that other 75% of the surplus go?
I'm not sure I understand your
Well,
question.
if I understood you,
Yes.
without this, when you have a surplus, you're only permitted as a collaborative to keep 25% of the surplus. So where does the rest of the money go?
Oh, that's usually in our expenditures and, you know, payroll and whatnot, so it's only 25% over what we budgeted for. So when we're at a zero budget, we've budgeted perfectly for our payroll, for our expenses and the like. We're only allowed 25% of our expenses to be held in that other reserve.
Okay, I misunderstood you
Yes.
there. Okay, so, go ahead, you got another question?
I think it's probably the same one you're gonna ask, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, what's the limit on the balance?
Yeah.
For this, 2 million. would
2
be-
million.
Yes, and again, I'm basing that on one thing that happened, I wanna say back in 2011 or 12, well before my time with the collaborative, where there was actually an offer put to the board, and I report to the board of directors, which are the 15 superintendents of those member districts. They make the ultimate decisions. My finance director and I will advise certain actions, such as funding OPEB or otherwise. So anyways, we certainly do see the need, you know, for saving these monies.
Go ahead.
I was actually around as a superintendent in the early days of the collaborative. I was one of the founding members, and at that time, And I'm amazed that you guys, after 49 years, still don't own anything. It's amazing.
I'm trying to change that a little bit here.
And you do a hell of a job in terms of the kids. I've seen transition into the collaborative programs and come back. I mean, great job.
Thank you. Just as a matter of point, prior to me coming to the collaborative, the 7 years prior, I was the special ed administrator for Grafton Public Schools, one of the 15-member districts. And unlike any of the other out-of-district placements where I sent students, such as private schools or other collaboratives, in those 7 years, Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative sent back 4 students to me. 3 of them were very successful. 1 graduated honors. 1 unfortunately dropped out, and may have done so anyways if they had stayed. But the other 2 are still going to school there and doing well. I get some reports because I get to see my old friends in Grafton every so often. So I know what you're talking about. We're not greedy. We don't take a student and keep them there with us just for the tuition's sake. We know that there are going to be students coming to backfill. In fact, I did some research on this. Our rate of referrals or requests for placement prior to COVID was about 38 or so students per year. It's now been over 100 per year since we returned from COVID. It's more than 2.5-fold. So I have been unfortunately having conversations with superintendents, with special ed administrators, saying we've got a wait list or we're not gonna be able to take these students, not so much for space, but the labor market's really hampered me. I see us being able to expand, and I wanna be ready for that.
Just one final question, and this isn't a leading question, I'm curious.
Sure.
What's the process if Tantasqua-Union 61 wished to reverse this decision at any point in the future? What's the process across the entire collaborative to do that?
To revoke the capital surplus, it would likely have to go through the board of directors. I'd have to research this, to be honest, because once it's established, then it's the board of directors that ultimately has control of the savings, the spending, and working with that, with me. I would imagine it would also be a 2/3 vote type of situation where it would be placed before the 15-member districts in order to do that.
So I just want folks to understand that, you know, it's a vote we're taking and likely wouldn't be able to change our mind on, just so we're clear.
Fair.
Since I'll be signing the contract, I'd like to know how to get in and how to go.
Understood.
Any other questions? Okay. So what's the formal vote, Arnold, that you're looking for?
Best way to phrase it is that you're seeking a motion to approve the creation of a capital surplus fund for Southern Worcester County Educational Collaborative with a limit of $2 million.
I'll move that.
Made by Mr. Haggerty, seconded by
I'll
Mr.
move.
Boyce. Discussion.
Is it a motion for the 2 committees, this joint?
One motion,
Okay.
and then we have 2 votes.
Okay.
Discussion? For Union 61, is there any objection? For Tantasqua, is there any objection? And by unanimous consent, the chair deems the motion carries for both Union 61 and Tantasqua. You have your vote.
Thank you very, very much. I do have a couple of forms that I do need as backup. Give them to you.
That has your signature on it, Mike.
The agenda we skipped.
Yeah, just let me yeah.
Yes.
You will. So at this point, before we move into the goals and evaluation portion of the agenda, I'd like to recognize Mr. Sturgis, who would like to introduce the Project 351 students to both Union 61 and Tantasqua.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Sturgis, good evening.
And for the Tantasqua folks, this could be my school committee report for the month, so. But we have 3 of our 5 Project 351 candidates who are able to make it. It's a busy time of year with softball. For 2 of our candidates couldn't make it out here. But as I joked with them when they came in, the high school, both vocational and the regular high school side, I get to bring students all the time, and this is the only time I get to acknowledge my kids. So I have 5 of the best kids in our building. They're awesome leaders, and I'm glad you get to hear from 3 of them. I promised them they didn't have to prepare long speeches. But they are, I think, prepared at least one of you, if not all of you, to share some of their experience at Project 351. So just for a little back, Mason Julian is here representing Brookfield. Violet Spooner is here representing Sturbridge. Hannah Whittier is from Wales. I always mix you and Ever up in Holland and Wales. Ever Temple is not here, is from Holland. And Olivia Fisk, who is our Project 351 representative from Brimfield. So we have 5 rock stars this year. And the 5 of them, just so you have a little information, were nominated by their teaching staff. I did give them an opportunity this year to kind of, if they wanted to do it, write up a little thing of involvement in their communities and things that they would be active in doing. And the amount of kids that poured things in, of how much our kids are involved in their communities, and these 5 came to the top and were voted in by their teachers based on their community involvement. It's just a show of how awesome these guys are. So I just wanted to introduce them. Mason, Hannah, and Violet. Anyone of you want to speak? Even if it's just about your launch day back in January.
I'll speak.
Mason.
So Project 351 is an organization where we have, Mr. Sturgis said, 1 student from all 351 towns in Massachusetts, and it starts for our ambassadors on something called Launch Day, where we all went to the Kennedy Library and met each other, and then we did community service at Kratos Crayons and other places to help our community. And that ties in a little bit to a project we did here that involved Kratos Crayons, which is the organization that helps children, young children with clothing insecurity. And we put a box here, and I put a box in Brookfield Elementary School. And those were donated to Kratos Crayons, which were all brought out to children with clothing insecurity across the state.
Thank you, Mace. No? So, yeah, so the 5 of them put together the project here, as Mason said. They had boxed in the front doorway for a week. I thought was there one at Burgess as well? Yeah, I believe there was as well. So, and they took the time, they did it all themselves. They stayed after, made signs, advertised it, did all the collecting, sorting, and distributed back to Cradles to Crayons. So, again, I just wanted to take a minute. I appreciate you guys giving us 2 minutes of your time to just recognize these guys, because they deserve it. They come to school every day. They're on sports teams. They're in clubs. They're heavily involved and still found time to do things in their communities as well. So, again, thank you guys for coming. I know it's tough on a Wednesday night in the middle of
Mr. Sturgis, let's get a picture with Mrs. Boyd, myself, and the kids.
Okay.
We need some Twitter feeds.
At least it's not Twitter anymore. We'll superimpose Olivia and everything.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, there we go.
Nice try, Greg.
Supposed to go up, don't you know?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I have an account, I'm just poor at it.
Thank you, Mr. Sturgis. Yeah, sure. Yep.
Oh, Bill, I should have worn that coat.
Yes.
Sharp. Easter must be late this year.
He's being roasted today.
Yeah, we're gonna do a Netflix.
I'm not even
Right. Oh, I get roasted all the time. Are you kidding me? Go on community pages. All right, next couple of items on the agenda. First is the superintendent evaluation for 2023-2024. I will review a summary with both of you on behalf of Mrs. Cunningham and myself. And then we will review the proposed goals for 2024-2025. So for the superintendent's evaluation, We had an 83% evaluation completion rate for Tantasqua and 86% evaluation completion rate for Union 61. So combined, 85% evaluation completion, so roughly 33 of 39 evaluations complete. The goals met range for the superintendent was averaged between 63% and 100%, with, again, progress made towards the goal for that delta. Ultimately, the aggregation for exemplary and proficient was 73% exemplary, 27% proficient. I won't read all of the comments, but there are, what did I say?
You said 73?
Oh, total.
Oh, total.
Oh,
Okay, so-
yeah.
okay.
That's all right, no, this is the total. Couple of quotes I thought I'd share, although she'll be embarrassed by these, but I'm gonna share them anyway. Superintendent Boyd has earned the trust and respect of our entire school community. From onboarding multiple central office administrators and a new high school principal to overseeing the Power School implementation, she steadily strengthens our district. Her ability to resolve challenges is a testament to her character. We are very fortunate to have a strong, knowledgeable, and approachable leader for our geographically large and diverse public school system. Many, many, many comments provided. I won't read them all, but I thought that those were a nice sampling of some of the great comments that were provided. And so with that, ultimately at this time, I'll be looking for a motion to grant Mrs. Boyd an exemplary review based upon the 85% evaluation completion rate of the Tantasqua-Union 61 school districts.
So moved.
Motion been made by Mr. Boyd, seconded by Mr. Goodwin. Is there any discussion on that? We were a little lighter than last year on participation, but we were still in really good shape. We've come a long way. When I first started 15 years ago, I think that we were hovering in the 30 to 40%. So we've more than doubled that, and that's really good. And we've tried to.
Didn't we agree on a public humiliation as a?
Well, I start texting people, so I do private humiliation. But I think the feedback we've continued to get, and let me tell you, this is, I think, a testament to our dear late friend, Mrs. Barnacle, who was really the catalyst behind driving participation for this process and encouraging more and more folks to take advantage of the opportunity to evaluate the superintendent. And we have, over the last 5 years, leveraging technology, I hope, made it a lot easier for you to be able to do that. When we first started this, I remember Aaron Nozick and I putting together piles of documentation, and you would get this package in the mail and you'd have to fill it out, and clearly that was not keeping up with the times. So that's why I slept through my alarm this morning. I set it on PM. So, with that, we have a motion on the table to approve an exemplary review for Mrs. Boyd. For members of the Union 61 school committees, are there any objections to that? For Tantasqua? Then by unanimous consent, the motion carries. Congratulations, Mrs. Boyd.
Thank you.
And that now, oh, Ms.
Fire
Haggerty.
No, one of the things I noticed as your mic was that it did not have the opportunity to comment on each of the goals,
Right.
and I really miss that. My end response was,
Yes, it was.
and I if we can put that back next year, I would really be appreciated.
Absolutely. I'll talk to Greg about that. Any other feedback?
Yeah, just reminiscing on the crazy early days, and it was a bit much. It did strike me that just sort of the number of questions we were asked, I got, is on the thinner end.
So
And maybe a little more beef. I mean, I don't want to go anywhere near where we started.
we
but-
can make it as beefy as you want. I will tell you that for the last 3 years, and I do assess this,
Yeah.
we had roughly 3% response rate on the sub-question verbatim section. So roughly only 3% of people were providing anything there. And a much greater response rate for the verbatims on the overall comments, which is why we removed it. Certainly something we can put back. It just, we hadn't been seeing that part of the survey leveraged at a very high clip. And then in terms of the questions, we assessed over the last three years what questions were either generally skipped or not answered at all, and tried to make sure that the ones where we were getting the most participation were the ones answered. So, you know, if you've got examples from past surveys that you want us to put back, just let us know. But again, we've just tried to make this as
Yeah.
simple as
Oh,
possible.
just so sure, if you've gone through the effort of,
Both.
Not this one. There's a question that stumps me literally every year, and I always choose both, but it says,
Can you screenshot that for me? Send that to me.
that is a screenshot that I'll
Oh,
send
yeah,
to you.
just text that to me.
Yeah, okay.
There. Yep.
Just a procedural question. So I know that several members of the Sturbridge School Committee didn't get an email until there was a reminder that it was due like a day or two later. So I don't know, does it normally get filtered from you?
You
to
didn't
all?
get an email from me?
I did not get an email from you, and I know at least one other member did not.
I mean, it goes out about 10 days before due date.
Do you wanna double check, like, if you have the right emails?
So do you think you did not get it initially?
I did not get it initially. The only email I got was when Sam sent a reminder email, and that, I know that Mary also.
And the reminder email had the link in it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes,
Huh, okay.
correct.
We will look into
So
that.
that may improve participation. We have more than 2
Well,
days.
actually, Union 61 was in good shape.
There was a couple that their emails weren't, they didn't get any emails from it, but I advise them that they need to really look at their Tantasqua email or provide an email that they're actually looking at to the group, so.
Yeah, all right. We will check the distribution list as
Yep.
well.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. All right, good feedback, thank you. That takes us to the superintendent proposed goals for 2024, 2025, which were in your packet. With again, the goal categories on the left, then the actual objective in the middle, with then the anticipated district impact on the right. Keep in mind, and we're going to discuss this in a little bit more detail in a minute, relative to the Horn Communications recommendations, but part of what we're going to be asking for approval for after this motion will be for the well, we don't necessarily need approval, but we're going to create an ad hoc subcommittee made up of hopefully many of you that wish to work on implementation recommendations relative to the communications review that was done for our district. That is the superintendent's last goal, but that will be in partnership.
And if I may, on that last goal, thank you, Eagle Eye Caroline, for finding the typo, which said on the second line there, that the report, it says is not being shared with all, but it was now being shared. Part of the email that went out did have the attachment. I think, and the reason we put that attachment for any of you that haven't gone clicking in there yet, is there's a number of links in there also where he created some suggested content that we're gonna take a look at and see what we think is a good idea or what might not. So it was better to send it to you all electronically than to print out the document and not have those backup link pages available.
So that was the final goal for district improvement, and then on page 1, student learning, again, a goal specific to improvements around MCAS math. Second student learning goal really focused around chronic absenteeism and improving that. As we know, that's been a challenge post-COVID. And then the professional practice proposed goal is really an update around the teacher evaluation process, and that would be for all 6 school districts. Are there questions? Yes.
A question, just on the first two. So regarding the first one, MCAS, just wondering, is that the best and/or only measure that we have of tracking math, or is it the easiest one to track? Just worried that it
It's the
encourages, like-
easiest, most consistent to track the impact of the new math curriculum at the elementary, which is why it was focused to elementary. And obviously the goal is if we get the elementary scores up, that let us springboard into the secondary, continuing the trajectory. But it was it was it was the best quantifiable. Star assessments are still gonna happen in every building in all the grades, but to use that as a measuring point, I don't think is as robust, or it's not as clear. There's a whole lot of star assessments. Some classes will give it 3 times a year, some 4 times a year, looking for the progress, and we certainly could create something, but I think something there to try and quantify would actually create more of a burden in trying to define what it should be consistently in every classroom across all 5 elementary schools.
Thank you.
Just a question in regards to like, I guess, kind of where we sit, so what's for the MCAS scores today? It's not
Yeah,
like
so,
it's
and the main reason I put that as a 2-year is because I'm looking to have an increase when we take it a year from now.
Okay.
So that we can really measure the impact of the new math curriculum and everything else we've put into place. So that is why a year from now, we won't have the results until the following October. So it's gonna be, we can take a peek at where we are after what we just did in the fall to see if some impact has been made, but the impact isn't gonna be able to be attributed to the new math curriculum. But we, as a total district, were in the mid-50s, 55, 56 pre-COVID. We were down to 46% last year. So I'm certainly expecting to get us over 50%, but that's just the beginning.
Skate?
Is there some kind of interim step that we could evaluate next year for student learning?
Well, and again, that, we can look at what the testing was this year, as we certainly have been working on math while we were doing the pilot this year, and how the pilot was actually, STAR assessment was showing some data for both piloted programs of progress this year at a higher level. So it is not uncommon to have 2-year goals. So, I mean, I can certainly demonstrate some progress made by looking at some of the STAR assessment data next year. Beginning maybe October to February or March, I would have by then. Otherwise, it would be a goal that is not measurable until the second year.
This past year, there were 2 different things being used, right?
We were piloting two different programs. We
things.
made
So,
the
yeah, it
decision
wouldn't-
on
it
one.
wouldn't count
Pilot's
anymore.
over, and now we're moving forward with the training and
So it will be
implementation.
2 years from the coming year.
Right.
That would, okay, good.
Could I add
Mm-hmm.
anything? So STARS and MCAS test 2 different things. STAR will actually track progress over a year's time. And it's not comprehensive of all standards. It's more grade level standards, where MCAS is comprehensive over years. So they're different measures, but as Deb said, this January, when we looked at STAR data, it didn't matter which pilot was happening. We were seeing tremendous progress. That we just, to standardize that progress, I think MCAS is the better tool.
Mr. Haggerty?
Just curious, kind of, like, it's been a while, and I'm old. What's the percentage of absenteeism at this point at the high school?
Oh, I have that.
Or is it Peter now?
It's just under 20s. Give me 1 second. Actually, I do. Overall, district-wide, in '23, it was 21.7%. '24, we're down to very recently, 15.7%. I don't readily have the 2 broken out, that's combined. We need, obviously want to get further down there. The state average pre-pandemic, and I don't have ours, pre-pandemic was 12.9. We certainly expect to be better than state, and we need a goal that is more aggressive than the state average.
So I just want to say, let me try I'm understanding the measure correctly. So a fifth of our students are missing more than 10% of the year.
But they did last year. Yep,
Wow.
yep.
Does that include the kids that were like out with COVID, but even followed their?
Well, you're looking
Because
at last
when
year,
you
you're gonna have some
pull those
COVID.
out,
that had COVID, you just.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, it's any student who was absent 18 days or more.
It's
If
10%
they're-
of their
regardless of the
membership
reason.
days, so if they come in late for the school year, it's the number of days that they were supposed to be in school, so it's full school year, 18 days.
In order to be, it's, chronic absenteeism is a 2-year mark, and you have to be in the district for more than 20 days to start that 2-year mark. So that's how it gets tracked over the time. So it's 20 days of membership or more in one district, and it's calculated after the second year that a student actually attends. That makes sense.
Are you able to break out, I mean, you know, medical things we can understand, but, you know, in very approximate, how bad is the neglectful, intentional playing hooky?
I don't think this is the arena to do. I think there are lots of reasons why students don't get to school, and the more we get them into school, the more we're gonna increase their
Okay.
learning, which is our goal. And we've talked throughout this year about a number of different things, attendance policy, some recovery days for absenteeism. Some is anxiety, school avoidance, some is family issues, and we need to look at all of the reasons this goal is targeting for secondary schools, where we put some things into place, and some of the challenges are different than elementary. But I did try to come up with 2 measurable goals, because I know to put one towards secondary, then what are we doing about the elementary? So, which is where I went toward the map for our Union 61 and the chronic absenteeism for the secondary.
Yep.
I am in agreement with the goal. I think it's a great goal. I don't know if you're ready or want to share anything about what that new policy is gonna look like, or if it's in place already.
We passed that policy.
Yeah, for the secondary, yeah, they've just, a month or so ago,
Yeah.
the school committee adopted and putting into handbooks the new attendance policy, and it deals with excessive tardiness, but ultimately can affect their credits.
It's a tiered enforcement system, basically, where the consequences escalate with the increase in absenteeism, right up to some very serious consequences, and hopefully that's enough to have our students want to avoid getting anywhere near that.
Great, thank you. I will look at that.
I'm just also curious for increasing Saturday school recovery options. Is there a way, I guess, for what was the number last year to, if we increase it by 5%, that means X more kids will go, and so.
Well, for starters, what we did, prior to this year, we did not, we just had Saturday school, which was really more of a restorative punishment option. We did not have a robust Saturday school that actually had enough academics to consider that replacing an absent day. So that's what we've recently worked together and put in place, and we'll be able to use more heartily next year. And we will offer as many Saturdays as we have participation. So if what we've got right now is I think it's a couple of months at the high school. We just started at the junior high, depending on need, but if there are students that are going to come, we'll have it every Saturday.
I think the policy has some expansive support built into the policy.
Right.
While there certainly are consequences, the intent is support
Yeah.
to
Right,
help our
exactly,
students.
right, because we can't just build this tier of penalty and credit loss without having it partnered with opportunities for them to really keep up or make up.
But they have to take advantage of it.
Yep, right, yep, absolutely.
It isn't the breakfast club.
I was thinking that, but I wasn't gonna say it, so I'm glad you did.
Thank you, Carolyn, no, it won't be.
Dr. Dufresne's gonna be the star of that.
And make the donuts.
But the policy also aligns good communication tools with parents, and that is ultimately what we're trying to bridge, is that misunderstanding, so that parents, students, and teachers all realize the importance of attending school. You can't educate kids when they're not in the classroom.
All right, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the superintendent goals for 2024, 2025 as presented with the one amendment, which is just the typo.
My typo.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Mrs. Noyes Miller, seconded by Mr. Goodwin. Further discussion? Seeing none for Union 61, are there any objections? For Tantasqua, are there any objections? Hearing none, then by unanimous consent, the motion carries and is approved by both bodies. That brings us to our final agenda item, which I stole its thunder already, and as you saw, based upon the approval, we just effectively codified this, but we have disseminated the Horn Communications Assessment Report. As you'll recall, from our last joint meeting, we ultimately brought in a consultant to do a series of interviews, have a series of conversations, do a fair amount of due diligence, really from kind of a mystery shopping perspective, if you will, going through our website and looking at some of the other collateral that exists throughout the 6 districts, and ultimately put together a series of recommendations and thoughts and areas for potential further exploration. Mrs. Boyd and I did meet to review the full package. Ultimately, you'll now have access to that full package. And what we'd like to do is to put together an ad hoc committee made up of a subset of this group to ultimately review and think through the recommendations and help put together an implementation plan that ultimately then Mrs. Boyd and the administration and again partnership with the school committees can begin to implement. So if you have interest in serving on that, we will send out a reminder communication. We'll make sure we have the right email addresses and solicit anybody's interest in participating in that. I think we're cognizant of the fact summer's approaching, so we'll be looking, I think, to really kick that off in the fall. But certainly, as I'm looking to do committee assignments for the Tantasqua School Committee, we'd like to be able to take into consideration anybody that has an interest in serving in that ad hoc as well. So we'll put out and continue to remind and float the ask throughout the summer, but won't expect you to attend meetings for that until the fall. All right. With that, I will entertain a motion to adjourn the joint meeting. So moved. Motion's been made by Mr. Boyce, seconded by Mrs. Cunningham. Any objection? By unanimous consent, the meeting is adjourned at 6:49. Tantasqua committee members will give a quick 5-minute recess. We can start it in 5 minutes. We were posted to start at 6:45, so we're good to go, but give folks a quick mile break if you need. We're going to call the Tantasqua Regional School Committee meeting to order at 6:57 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
No, I do have to.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Before we move to the agenda, I will turn the meeting over to Mrs. Boyd.
This is my 3-minute thing. Time to reorg. So I will take any nominations for chair for the upcoming year.
I nominate Michael Valenzola. I'm standing to make my nomination.
Are there any other nominations? I can drag this out as long as Hearing no other nominations, I'm going a different way. All in favor of Mr. Valenzola being chair for the next year?
Aye.
Think about it,
Either way, anyone opposed, raise your hand. There you go.
Abstentions?
You just don't vote. You want us to record that? You can do that on this next one. All right, well, thank you
can go
very
down the
much.
rest of the
Always a
dockets.
pleasure. I believe at the end of this year, I will have taken Mr. Miller's record.
Will you?
Mm.
Oh.
Yes.
See if you beat mine someday. Exactly.
All right, at this time, I'll entertain nominations for the position of vice chair.
I nominate Bill Haggerty.
We have a motion and a second. Although nominations don't require seconds, but I love the enthusiasm. We need a third.
Checks in the mail.
Are there any other nominations? Let's see, now we'll close nominations. Is there any objection to Mr. Haggerty's continued tenure as vice chair?
Is it time to speak up?
Just one. All right, seeing none, then by unanimous consent, Mr. Haggerty, congratulations on another term as vice chair. At this time, we will take nominations for the position of secretary.
I'd like to nominate,
It's a very tough job.
yeah,
Sheila knows me.
Sheila, yeah, I'm sorry. I nominate Sheila.
We may have to revisit the last
Tough room
Do it.
tonight.
We have a
This is
nomination.
really
for-
on vitamin water.
For Mrs. Noyes Miller, are there any other nominations for the position of secretary? Seeing none, we will close nominations. Is there any objection? Seeing none, then by unanimous consent, Mrs. Noyes Miller is re-elected as secretary. All right, that brings us to the approval of minutes. I'll first entertain a motion for approval of the regular session minutes of April 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Motion's going to be made by Mrs. Noyes Miller, but seconded by Mr. Haggerty.
I wrote these minutes, so.
Ooh, I might have to split the two of them.
Any discussion on the minutes, any edits?
Yeah, right.
Seeing none then, all those in favor of the minutes will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion carried.
Yeah, we did executive, we need to go and talk about movie.
Okay.
Are they not in the packet?
See the minutes.
They are, I've got it.
Oh, I'm sorry, they were behind the budget, yeah. Sorry about that. All right, at this time then, I will. Okay. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve and authorize the release of the executive session minutes for April 30th, 2024.
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Cunningham. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Panic. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Any abstentions for the record? Just one. All right, with that, the motion carries. Now we will go to the financial report and recognize Mrs. Leo.
Good evening. The front page, we are continuing to spend money and receive money. Obviously, the receipts are a little bit behind. I did check again right before this meeting, and we have received about another $1 million in the past week, so the money is slowly coming in and being input into our systems. We will get everything we're supposed to get, I'm sure. Are there any questions on any of the other pages in the document?
Mr. Haggerty?
Yeah, just a question. Do you have any idea what we might close the year out with as far as, available funds that are not expended?
The balance that we are
Yeah,
at. So we're, at this point in time, we're on target. After a vote that will come to you under budget, hopefully, to be 300 to 400,000, which will cover the E&D that we voted to go towards next year's budget.
Gotcha.
So that, in theory, we'd be neutral in E&D when all is said and done.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You still, your friends.
I was
Thunder
I was
over
unclear.
Exactly. It's all good. It's all right. It's all good.
Further questions or discussion on the financial report? Leo? Well, we don't have any of our current student representatives, but we have one of our favorite. Mr. Rosen, did you want to give that today? Tell us how Mr. Sturgis is to work for.
Oh, so. I left it in the car, the report.
It's good to see you. All right, we will move to staff reports. Did you want to add anything?
I just want to add to point out that we had our yearly Memorial Day ceremony that we brought back last year. And it was highly attended by family member veterans in our community, which was great to see. And Mrs. Daly kind of took the lead because Mrs. Willard had run it and she retired, obviously. And Mrs. Daly picked up and didn't miss a beat, and it was just great. We had, I'm having a brain fart on the spot. Senator Femin was unable to join us, but a representative from his office, who was a Tantasqua grad, Amanda Hellier, spoke on his behalf. And it was just a great morning last week. And the other one was, I want to note, was today, Public Safety Day. We did have state police, UMass police, fire, EMS, Holland Wales police, a number of the chiefs on site for our Public Safety Day for students to go out and see the equipment. We have the drone, the Sturbridge Police drone here, showing the kids how they use that throughout the day. So it was just a fun day. The officer, Nick Martirosian, as our SRO, put together with local law enforcement. And we've done it a couple years in a row now, but it's one of those days the kids absolutely love. So I did want to point those two days of note out to the committee.
Yeah, I heard from Representative Small on the Memorial Day festivities, and he had glowing comments about it, so nice work.
I omitted his name. Yeah. Representative Smolla was there. He gave a nice speech. And I like when I hear professional speakers who speak so much more eloquently than I do. So I say less on those days and let them say more.
Mr. Wood, your report, and I believe we got a vote.
And I will make that my report. So I'm looking for approval for an out-of-state trip for Skills USA for 3 students and for Mr. Bernard to chaperone them.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the Skills USA National Competition trip as requested and offer exemption to the faculty chaperone.
So moved.
Motion been made by Mrs. Randall. Is there a second? Seconded by Mrs. Cunningham. Any discussion? Are there any objections? Seeing none, by unanimous consent, the motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Wood. Dr. Dufresne.
A lot going on at the high school as we sort of cruise to the end. Just a few things to share before I get to our end of the year events. Our English department shared quite a bit this month. We are working on, as always, sort of MCAS preparedness, but a little more exciting than that is our work with artificial intelligence. We have an artificial intelligence task force group. A lot of our English departments on that group. We are working towards sort of leaning into it as opposed to being run over by it. So we've had a few sort of interesting experiences. Mr. Barr's literature, the fantastic students read a novel and then tried to collaborate with artificial intelligence on a personal narrative. It's sort of informing how we are going to tackle this sort of academic beast. I don't think it's going away. I think artificial intelligence is with us, here to stay, so we're trying to lean into that. More to come. Summer reading, our theme is mythology. I'm sure you're all excited about that. I can get you a copy of any of the books that we're reading this year. Great thanks to our student council, as I feel like I do every month. They did a great job with senior send-off week, and we'll be holding officer elections in the upcoming week. So we have a lot going on there to prepare for next year. Big congratulations to some of our musicians for the MMEA Central Junior Districts. We had some students placed there, and I'm sure you can see that, and we're pretty proud of them. Today was a big day for athletics. A lot of brackets were released and playoff games being frantically scheduled. I have had finally some email exchanges, and I told you I heard back from Bob Baldwin. Mr. Wood and I have some issues with the way the MIA and the playoff setup works. I don't love sending my students out to Newburyport on a Tuesday night in February. on a school night to play basketball. So after some prodding, he's coming out to Tantasqua for lunch at some point and to discuss sort of the playoff brackets with us. I'm sure I'll have more to report on that as it comes. We're really proud of our athletes. We started our senior signings this year, which I'm sure you can see in your report, and we have a lot of student athletes going on to further their athletic career, which is terrific. Only about 7% of high school students nationwide get to play any level in college. And if you went to the Athletic Boosters Senior Awards Banquet last night, I feel like for some reason we're heavy biotech. I'm not sure. It felt like every other student was majoring in some, which is great. I don't know that it was cause and effect. I think it might be the thing. I leaned over at one point and asked someone, is anyone an English major anymore? Or everyone's biotech.
There was one history.
There was one history, that's right, yep. Me and Bryce. Just a thanks to the athletic boosters, the banquet last night. It's my first time. We are really lucky to enjoy the support of groups like the Boosters and TED and TMA, the Music Association. It was a terrific event for our students. And then finally the prom went great. I really did not want to like the venue because it was in Framingham, but it was really nice, and the food was good, and they treated the kids well, which is really all we're looking for. The kids had a great time, and proud to say that it was eventless. Class night and graduation coming up this week, and so we're sort of hammering over there across the street to make sure all those things go off really well. Schedule is ready to be turned over to guidance, and it came out quite well, if I say so myself, and so we're excited as we close out this year well to start looking to plan for the future. That's my report.
Thank you, sir. Questions for our principals? Seeing none, we'll move to our subcommittee reports. First is budget. I know Mrs. Wesbower, there's a couple of recommendations coming out of your report.
Yeah, we met on May 21st, and in your packet, you'll see that there was a request to fund from rural aid 2 staffing positions, a guidance counselor for the junior high and an assistant principal for the senior high. They're definitely, we felt, were well-needed positions that should be filled. There was a little discussion and concern about if rural aid went away, how would we fund the position? And Superintendent Boyd assured us that she's very confident that rural aid is here to stay. And the majority of the committee did approve these 2 positions. And there's a job description also.
All right, so let's, so the first recommendation is the FY25 staffing request, which is the guidance counselor at the junior high and the assistant principal at the high school. So that's a recommendation to the budget subcommittee. We'll bring that to the floor. Mrs. Boyd, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to, an update actually since the meeting. I am even more sure of rural aid because we did not have, the Senate had not finished their budget as of then. And so rural aid, current year is $15 million. The governor put it at $15 million. The House dropped it to $7.5 million. The Senate brought it up to 15 with another amendment to add another 1.7 million. So that conference is going, and dare I say, even with cameras rolling, I believe Representative Smola is on that conference committee and is very much a supporter and knows where we stand on rural aid and has expressed support of it. So rural aid is definitely going to continue. We've advocated to, in the future, get information out as part of the early budget process so that we know how much we're getting. But what we've gotten this year at that $15 million level, we didn't find out until October. We were getting $700,000. So we're in line for that same thing next year until they put it in the beginning process. But I have hopes that that's going to change because there is a rural commission looking at that. So what we've done for the past couple of years is buy capital technology, do some things that would have been on, that were on the capital plan that we didn't need to spend school choice on, take care of things like that, and then when we get towards the end, we can pay for anything in the budget, so we've needed to spend it by June 30th, and we've bought things that were in the operating budget, which put us in a position of having balances at the end, and we'll talk about that again with OPEB. So it is a pool of dollars that the state completely understands. We have rural communities that want to be able to keep the level of services but have many barriers. So I am confident it's going to continue. These two positions, as we presented, really, and I am not afraid to say, are really, they're gaps. We have gaps in serving our kids on both sides of the street in a counseling and mental health support here at the junior high, and counseling, mental health, and guidance services, as well as overall, your assistant principals have spent far more time, and your principals, for the last couple of years, putting out fires than being educational leaders. And we've got to disconnect, we need to help the guidance department balance between building schedules and changing schedules and getting our students into college if that's what they choose to do, and meeting their general mental health and guidance needs. So we find these two shortfalls. I support the principals in their asks. We would have put them in the budget, but we knew first draft, the budget was already at 3%. And looking at where our communities were, knew some communities were gonna have some difficulty because of some of the special ed out-of-district placements that show up in the elementary budget. So they don't have 3% budgets. 3 of them have 7 and 8% budgets this year. So we knew we needed to balance that. But I am confident we can at least this year fund these 2 positions from rural aid. I'm confident rural aid will continue for a few more years. But as I said, we can make it part of the budget process every year to say, do we want to move 1 or 2 of these positions into the general budget, especially if they finally move rural aid up to a number we find out when we find out Chapter 70. Okay. Either of the principals would be happy to speak to the positions if there's questions.
All right, discussion of the committee.
Are we going to discuss the job positions?
That's what
Okay.
we're on.
All right, I'm just making sure you're entertaining that right now. I just had a question about the assistant principal job description and what, I'm trying to determine how the 3 assistant principals will break out, and if, how you came to the decision of not having someone designated to the tech school, for example, and one to the academic, and
Sure, I'm happy to start, and Mr. Wood jump in if I go astray. So we have 2 of the most, I'm biased, we have 2 of the most talented vice principals I've worked with in 22 years of principaling. When I started, I think the model was sort of there was a tech VP and an academic VP, and Mr. Wood and I, spoke as we do often, and the VPs work, they don't work in that model. Whether or not we directed them to or not, they are a true team, and they just take the kids that need student management or need assistance and they go. So there's never a line out one's door and the other one is doing nothing. So to continue in that model makes sense to us because they're working within that model. Right now, they're pretty much only student management based on just the numbers. Does that answer your question?
I think so.
If I can clarify, the job description, I forgot was even in here. The bolded are items that are not in a job description and need to be done, have been done. Some of the coordination of testing has been done with stipends for the last couple of years. Little bit of history, a number of years ago, we actually had a year-round 12-month vice principal and a 10-month. When they both became 10-month, some of these things just sort of fell through the cracks. So there are things that need to be done better than they have been. The model would end up having 3 assistant principals, all with this job description, but in any given year, what their assignments are
Okay.
come from the principals.
And we're stipending out for some of the things that are bolded now. And so some of those things would go away. We have a division of labor that would allow for people to work within their talents and also allow for us to do some of the work. Some of the data analysis and metrics that we want to conquer, you know, if we're a top 50 school in the state of Massachusetts, that's great. But it's not great if we should be a top 15 school. And some of that is how we do our business. And some of it is testing metrics and understanding what it is that we're working towards. Doing that data analysis takes some time, and I've used this model in other schools rather successfully, where there's a division of labor such that it allows for some forward thinking, as well as the day-to-day operations that need to get done.
And I think that the benchmarking you provided beyond the work, showcases candidly, if you compare us to many of the schools in the area, the student service and support that we're providing, albeit through very talented people, is pretty significantly different than the pupil ratios at some of these other schools, which I'll be honest, when I saw that is when I got right on board with the need.
I pulled those numbers from our DART, which is the DESI tool that compares us with like schools. And the first 2 are just sort of geographic, Quabbin and Palmer, and then the bottom 2 are 2 closest neighbors in the DART tool. Amherst is probably the highest per pupil expenditure funding in, well, not the state because there's Weston, but certainly in Western Massachusetts, and Minnetrog is really probably a more likely comparison to us.
All right, further discussion, other questions? All right, we have a motion before us. Is there any objection to the motion? All right, hearing none by unanimous consent, the motion carries. All right, we have a second item.
The summer school fund was, a motion for $25,000 from school choice for summer school credit recovery. And that was a unanimous vote of the budget subcommittee.
We'll bring that to the floor. It's a recommendation, doesn't require a second. Do you want to add any color?
Yeah, we actually just a couple of weeks ago found out that we are not going to get, the last couple of years, DESI has had grants. There were DESI grants and United Way grants to pay for summer schools, specifically credit recovery for those who either, in some cases, are gonna graduate without them or want to stay up and move to the next grade. We only found out 2 weeks ago that we did not get any of those grants. We feel like it's a little too last minute to ask students who are planning to attend and get their credit recovery to have to pay for it. So the ask is for up to $25,000 from school choice to pay for that, get them through the year, and as part of the budget, we'll have a better feel for how much the cost really is with the current population, and we can talk during budget process whether that is something there is an interest or talent in doing on a regular basis.
Discussion? Any objection? And by unanimous consent, the motion carries.
We also, it's not listed
Yeah,
on
you
here,
missed it on this agenda,
but
but
we did
agenda item.
vote to move $250,000 into OPEB. And that was unanimous approval of the budget subcommittee.
We'll bring that motion to the floor, recommendation of the budget subcommittee, and where is that coming from? That's just surplus from the
Correct.
budget.
Right.
So
Correct.
going back to
That
your
is
question
correct.
earlier,
Yes.
anticipated surplus is 250 to OPEB,
We'll bring this.
which is growing rather well.
It's over $1 million.
Yeah.
It's not near the $27 million the actuaries say we're supposed to be targeting, but it's
we're getting
something.
there.
And we are.
We're
And we
chipping
have
away.
an OPEB trustee meeting coming up.
Okay.
We've got a schedule.
Okay.
All right, so that's the motion before you, 250,000 out of our surplus to OPEB. Is there any discussion? Any objections? Seeing none, by unanimous consent, the motion carries.
That's it for me,
Thank you,
thank you.
Mrs. Noyes Miller. That brings us to technical. The technical subcommittee did issue a written report. Are there any questions on the technical subcommittee report?
Danielle, you gonna?
You
If you
wanna
would
speak to it?
entertain a brief overview, that'd
Go
be
for it.
great. So, we only meet a couple times a year, so.
But your report is very thorough.
The technical subcommittee met on May 17th in the Cornerstone Cafe. We have the best subcommittee. We get to meet over lunch and see the fabulous culinary and hospitality students. We did miss out on the lobster. They were sold out, but we did have, for real. There was a big crowd in the dining room that day, so it was really nice to see, and we had a good lunch. And Mr. Wood gave us an overview of their most recent program advisory, which is when they bring together advisors from all the shops to talk about needs for the program, budget recommendations. And so he reviewed some of those details with us on the recommendation for an EKG machine and an autoclave, which is funded out of the Perkins Equipment Grant. And he also told us about the comprehensive local needs assessment, which is a requirement every 2 years for the Perkins Grant. And it brings in demographic data, workforce placement data, teacher pipeline, and any issues that they're having in recruiting and programming the shops and everything. We saw a sample of this process with the health careers that the program advisory worked on, and things are running swimmingly well, I would say. We also looked at some demographic data. The school attracts 25% non-traditional enrollment, which means if you're not traditionally the gender that's going to be in a certain shop, you're considered non-traditional, and so that's the goal, is to attract a more varied student population to these shops, and we're doing well there. And enrollment is up. We're expecting in the next school year 550 students in 9 programs. We're expecting more students from within the district. So there are fewer students for out-of-district lottery placements. And we're serving our students well. Ted, do you have things to add?
You did a great job.
Mr. Wood? Awesome.
Any questions for Mrs. Lynn O'Kane? All right, thank you for the report. Brings us to curriculum. Mrs. Cunningham?
So we had our last meeting of the year on Monday, April 29th. The committee members were joined by 2 of our building principals and Michelle Saramet from the high school health office. Topics for discussion were AP enrollment and participation, the 2023 College Board scores and new health standards. For AP enrollment and participation, we had 262 total exams in 2023, which is a little lower in terms of how many students are taking the AP courses in comparison to who's taking exams. So there's some work to be done to find out why kids aren't taking the exams. When we did have a MIMSI grant, there were many more students that took the test, and that was, the grant covered that money. For SATs, we had our school or district average total score was 1177 compared to 1190 for the state and 1181 for global testers. And then there was a review of the sort of most recent supplemental materials used by the health programs, and we're looking to align curriculum for K-12 through in health.
Any questions for Mrs. Cunningham?
An overall question, not necessarily for you.
Sure.
Now that we don't have the grant, is there any avenue students can go to that cannot afford to take the AP testing?
College
It's
Board
just-
provides discounted,
Okay.
tests, discounted test fares for, low-income students,
Mhm.
where I believe it's $20 an exam. And if they're not identified through the virtual gateway, there's a supplemental form that can be filled out.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a
Constance?
quick question. This year for the juniors, there was no really college prep night for them. Is that something that's going to be now not going to be accommodated?
You mean college prep night?
It's a juniors night. They prep them for what they need to do in college, what they need to do for the next year, what is their process.
Like a road to college night?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they used to have a big night and a video.
I was gonna say, one of the things that came up at our meeting was the PSATs, how that if you take it in the fall of junior year, you're eligible for the National Merit Scholarship. That's not really broadcast, so you either know that information or
Right.
you don't. So I think, and I think that kind of shows, again, Deb spoke to some of the gaps that we've seen in that college and career readiness, but that's part of it.
Yeah.
I think what you're speaking to,
Is
which
that-
I know exactly what you're
Right.
talking about, was generally run by the guidance department. I
Right.
think we had some turnover in leadership there a few years ago, and I don't know.
This year it was
Yeah.
missed, and there was a lot of information, even
Yeah,
my
I think
daughters
it
are
was-
just getting into their SATs June 1st, because none of that was really talked about
I know a
and
lot
brought
of
up,
kids
so.
that missed the deadline for SATs.
Right, so I
the
just
first
didn't know if
batch
it's
in.
something you guys gonna bring back,
Yes.
because I think that's really important, especially for those juniors and that, now we're a little bit behind.
Yeah, we've had some turnover, it's not an excuse, it's an explanation in the leadership of that department, but we missed a few, we talked about it in the curriculum stuff, I think we missed a few opportunities for some marketing around the SATs. And I think we probably need to bring back some sort of road to college night for the juniors.
Yeah. Just a comment. Thank you.
Mrs.
I
Kenyon?
was just gonna say, I think, kind of going back to the communications ad hoc committee, this is an area where we definitely failed our students, and we could have done better, so I think that's definitely an opportunity. for
Thank you.
improvement.
All right, thank you very much. Bylaw and policy, Mrs. Fitzgerald.
Shockingly, there are
I
no policies.
know, I just wanted to hear you say it.
Everyone needs to, this may never happen again.
And I thank you, because I just finished 5 elementary schools that had their second reading and done for the year. It's awesome not to end with open items.
Just so you know, we did meet last month, and we are meeting again next Thursday, the 6th. But in the absence of any pressing policy concerns, and for everyone's sake, we are going to hold all those policies to our fall meeting so we can get first and second reading done in the same academic year.
Very good, thank you, Mrs. Fitzgerald. Mrs. Randall, I think we're up to speed on negotiations.
We're done.
Amen.
Those have been signed, sealed, delivered. Then finally, building a physical plan.
There was a meeting, Kristen, I'm not sure who made it, I was, due to work obligations, I wasn't able to make it, but wasn't
Yeah,
there a
There was
meeting?
in April, and Andy gave a report at the
Okay,
April
you did,
meeting.
perfect,
Um,
all right, thank you.
There's been some follow-up on the pool coordinator type of information, so if anybody from the building and physical plant wants to see me afterwards, I can give you some handouts.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to the superintendent's report. Mrs. Boyd is all that's between you and dinner.
Oh, man. I go home and write a graduation speech anyway.
Me too, so let's go.
No, just a couple others, really more things around the district. I tried to send you all a file of pictures from the first Heritage Homecoming that happened across the street. It was the same night, it was a lovely day of celebration. The new teacher celebration for new hires and their new teachers and their mentors we have every year. That also ends in a lovely meal at the Cornerstone with all the new teachers across the district that they put on a brief presentation, and that ended just in time to go down to the cafeteria and see students and staff from all across the district and all cultures, nationalities, celebrating all kinds of really cool, fun things happening there, which was awesome. I thank Dr. Dufresne for forgetting to say that tomorrow will be our first district-wide senior stroll, with those seniors who have chosen to get up on a day they don't have to, so I cannot say every single one of them, but we will have 5 buses here at 9 o'clock in the morning, leaving, 1 bus going to each elementary school with seniors in their caps and gowns and going to be celebrated and do the senior stroll at the elementary school. So I am really looking forward to and trying to figure out how to at least get 2 schools, when I know the stroll will probably be about a half an hour. But I think it'll be a fun event. I know the elementary principals are really looking forward to it, and each school has their own special thing planned with kids, and the little kids. So I think that'll be a great one. We look forward to some pictures, because if my elementary principals don't send us pictures, there's going to be a lot of trouble.
How many students signed up for that?
118.
There you go.
All right.
That's a pretty good number.
Yep.
That's really good.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
They
We're,
don't-
especially for the first time, the students asked for it, so it was there.
We had, and to give credit where credit is due, the workings of it was being discussed back in 2020. We were planning in 2020 to try, we had not put all plans in place, but we were talking about it back then, and then things got in the way.
We did the drive-by that year.
Exactly, yeah. So I think it'll be great. And then just the final reminder, anybody who wants to serve pizza on Friday, be at the Shack at, if you're there by 11, we're looking for pizza delivery 11:15, and we're gonna drag out their rehearsal as long as it takes to get to 11:15 to make them eat some pizza and ice cream before they leave. That's it.
I had a nice picture of us pop up on Facebook today, 10 years ago.
Flashback.
10 years ago.
Yeah, it looks like I've eaten a lot of pizza since then. We have no items under communications, no unfinished business or net new business, public access.
Hi, real quick.
Public access or call, oh yeah, we don't have it on there, so.
Well, yeah, it's a letter from a parent, musician, and our school committee member, Eric Jagger. He's had a couple of parents come to him, and there's been a few questions. He wrote something up for me to read. The kids are forced to choose between academics and music. If they want to take the courses they are told they need for college, like foreign languages, then music isn't an option. The elementary schools and the middle schools are doing a fantastic job of building singers and instrumentalists in the choral and band programs, but then instead of being able to continue in their high school music is an elective, and that they may not be able to fit either 1 or 2 semesters of that. And I don't even know.
Well, this came up at the last meeting, we had somebody.
Yeah, I remember.
And
thought you
it's
already
been
addressed
resolved,
it.
so respectfully, Mr. Jager needs to contact the principal.
Okay, so it's been resolved?
That's-
It was never, we moved some things around so all students can take music, and we've been
Okay.
very proactive. Mr. Brozick, and I'm gonna get another one of your teachers' name, Rhonda. We sent out communications to families and students, and we have done the same on our side of the street, so.
Oh, perfect, great.
Yep.
I
so
guess I
they'll-
should have asked before, versus.
No, I wanna be, anyone who's got a question, we're happy to
Thank
help
you.
us, but we don't wanna stop anyone taking a music course.
That's it. That was it from
I have one quick
Oh, yeah.
question. You're not planning on a June meeting?
Well, no,
Okay,
that's in my.
well, so before you do that, I should have addressed Mr. Wood earlier. The building project for next year, what's going on with that situation?
We are looking at it, I didn't know about, so I can get that to you in another format or something, but it has to definitely be nailed down by June.
Yeah, I mean, I was just,
That's
it is in the process.
It
and
is definitely in the process.
good.
Actually, yesterday, Mr. Segan and I reviewed a project that I think is going to be the project. It's in Sturbridge. I'm not committing to it right now.
Right.
It's actually a second floor addition, and it's close. It's on the trail. So as far as travel back and
Yeah.
forth, that will be
I just
great.
wanted to make sure that the
No, I
program was
appreciate that.
ongoing and that it would be
Oh, absolutely.
there for the students next year.
Absolutely.
Thank
We've
you.
not had an abundance of proposals the last couple of years.
Yeah,
And-
really?
Is this the only one we got this year?
Well, technically, we had two, Mrs. Boyd. The other one was, can you fix my front stairs? I did explain to the woman
Yeah.
that we would be happy to do that, however, that's not the scope of the building project, so.
Right.
But this does look like a very viable, good
Good,
project, so
good.
Mr.
I'm glad
Seaman
there's
is
something
pleased
for
with it.
them.
All right, well, with that, at the current moment, we do not believe we will need a June meeting. Certainly if business comes up that we need to tackle, we will advise with as much notice as possible. Communication will be coming out over the summer for subcommittee selection. As you know, I try to do my best to make sure everybody gets at least one of their one or two requests, and, you know, yeah.
Will the ad hoc communications be on that list, or is that separate?
We will have a separate communication on that, but I will remind folks when I send out I'd like to have a sense of those of you that would like to be on the ad hoc committee, because I'm gonna take that into consideration with committee assignments. But we'll do a reminder if we don't have the requisite number of members. Okay. With that, I will entertain a motion for adjournment. It's been made by Mrs. Panic, seconded by Mrs. Cunningham. Those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Have a wonderful summer. It's going to be a nice warm one.
Thank you.